My one-man musical that was 2 hours long, where I played 11 characters and did like 15 musical numbers, opened on the coldest winter to date in Chicago. It was so cold, I wore a winter coat in the dressing room at intermission. Then I got an audition for this Disney Channel show nobody really knew about. It was called The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. They originally had it broken down as a big, hairy Hagrid type. And I walked into the waiting room and I'm looking around going, what am I doing here? And I remember finishing the audition for the head writer and another writer, and it was dead silent. And they looked at each other and one said to the other, can we do that? But I ended up booking that, and that is what I've been most recognized for my entire life. And when I booked it, my manager or my agent at the time told me not to take it. It was the first time any of us had seen it. A couple kids saw me, and all of a sudden, it just turned into a melee. It was just like all these kids totally turned away from the guitar player. He was like, what is going on? And I was taking pictures with hundreds of, it was crazy. They had a character that was an owl, and they cast Gene Wilder.
Oh.
So I'm like, what the fudge? And he comes in and he says, so I did a little research on owls, and I wrote a little poem that I thought we might be able to use. And everybody's like, okay, Gene Wilder. And I just happen to have it.
Wow. All right. Welcome to the Actor's Guide to the End of the World podcast, where we talk about acting in Hollywood in a way people understand. I'm E-Kan Song, and this is...
And I'm Rían Kelly. How you doing?
What's up, buddy? Follow us wherever you find your podcasts at Actors Guide Podcast. We're on all social media at Actors Guide Podcast. Follow us for fun clips during the week. Leave us a review if you get a chance. It really helps the podcast. So today is a special episode. We have Brian Stepanek, incredible career. Look at his IMDb. He had a breakout role as Arwen in Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, a long-standing collaboration with Michael Bay. Toured with Second City. He has stories with Jim Carrey. He's also a teacher at Lesly Kahn Studios. He has an incredible podcast, Here From There.
He's a brilliant approach to acting and directing and life in general. I've learned so much from him.
Hope you enjoy this episode with Brian Stepanek. This is a real treat. I've heard so many stories about you from Lesly Kahn Studios. Mm-hmm. You have a storied career, series regular on many shows, big films. Thank you for coming on the show. Welcome to the podcast. There's so much to get to in so little time.
Let's go back to Cleveland. Let's go back to Cleveland. Let's start at the beginning.
Can you please just say Cleveland again with that dialect? Because it is fantastic.
Cleveland.
Let's talk about Cleveland. I love it. Cleveland's never sounded so beautiful as when you say it. God, we're going to go back that far. I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I was the youngest of six. I have 4 brothers and a sister. My sister lives a block that way from me, and she and I do a podcast together. She's a producer out here. My brothers are all back in Cleveland. You know, I was a goofball as a kid. I was 5 years younger than my next sibling, my sister. So I spent a lot of time by myself in my basement with the shag 70s carpet.
I remember that.
Watching Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, Jerry Lewis, every Jerry Lewis movie on Saturdays, and monster movies, and I lived for watching Jerry Lewis and Abbott and Costello. Like, as a kid, it just spoke to me. And then I went to high school. I did theater in high school. I did a local community theater in my little tiny town. And I ended up directing that theater when I was in high school and college. I directed the middle school and then the high school versions. I did directed big musicals there while I was in college. While I was in college, I went and visited Chicago, visited my big sister in Chicago, and saw Steve Carell and Steve Colbert in Economy of Errors, a show at Second City. Wow. And Steve Carell was such an unbelievable standout. If he had never gotten famous, I would have thought about that guy a couple times a year. Even if he never got famous, I would have been like, that guy. He did a scene where he comes home. I think it's called Bachelor Party. Nobody could do it on tour. But what you do at Second City, I ended up touring with Second City. What you do is you take scenes that have been already written and produced, and you put together any ones you want on your tour, and you go out on tour and you do those scripted scenes, and then you do an improv set afterwards. And there was a scene he did called Bachelor Party where he comes home drunk to his fiance from his bachelor party. And it was so brilliant. None of us could do it on tour. No one else could do it because it was purely him playing completely drunk and jealous, and he was brilliant. So I saw them and decided I'm going to come back and do this. And so I ended up doing a one-man musical my senior year. I did a lot of musical theater in college. I did a one-man musical called Herringbone in Syracuse. I went to Syracuse University. I did it there, and a young producer from Chicago wanted to start a theater company. She thought this was the great way to do it. She was a Syracuse grad. She said, come to Chicago. We'll produce it in Chicago. And so my one-man musical that was 2 hours long, where I played 11 characters and did like 15 musical numbers, opened on the coldest winter to date in Chicago in like 1994. And I performed that freaking show for 2 audience members on 3 separate occasions. And it was just a brutal introduction. And I worked my ass off on it. And to this day, I think it was some of the best stuff I've done because I worked my ass off. And it was so cold, I wore a winter coat in the dressing room at intermission by myself because there's no other cast member. So it was me and the piano player just sitting there. It was horrible. So I ended up kind of quitting for a while. I didn't consciously say, I'm done, but I went and I got like a job at Kinko's, and I was working as an assistant manager in a restaurant, and I just kind of like let the business go. And I got a call. I had taken an improv class, and I got a call from a producer at a theater that said, we're doing an original musical called Hans Brinker, and we need a guy to play this teenage kid. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. This is like
this is in Chicago.
Yeah, it's in Chicago. This is like, you see Joseph Campbell's like the hero's journey, and like you get that call to action and you refuse it. I literally refused it 3 times. They called me and I was like, no. And they said, where do you live? And I said, I live on this street. It goes, we're a block from you. Just walk here and sing happy birthday. That's all we want. And I was like, fine. And I went and they cast me. And so I was like, fine, I'll do the show. And I did the show. And then one night I improvised something different in a scene, and the audience lost it. And I just went, oh, crap. And there it is. And I turned and I remember looking at a guy's shoe, and an audience member's shoe. It was a thrust theater, probably sat maybe 150 people. And I saw the guy's shoe, and that image, because that thought hit me as I was exiting and saw that guy's shoe. And that's when I was back in. And so then I started auditioning a ton and took classes, and then got hired by Second City. I started doing a ton of musicals. I ended up in the dinner theater circuit. I did lots of commercials and voiceover while I was there. And I ended up winning a Jeff Award there, which is like their Tony Award for a show called Me and My Girl. I played Bill Snipson in Me and My Girl, which is like Pygmalion or My Fair Lady, but with a guy. And it's a super goofy character. It's so fun. And I saw the original production in London in college, and I was like, I am going to play that role someday, and I got to do it. Then I did Company. I played Robert in Company. I did a lot of stuff there. And then I just decided after the Jeff Award that I needed to move and go to LA. So I moved to LA, lived in a shitty apartment for 3 years, went through a commercial strike, which is how I made all my money. So I kind of went broke, then had to kind of build that back up. And my girlfriend, now my wife, moved out. We got married. We bought a house. And, then I kind of ended up doing, still auditioning, but not a lot of TV film stuff. And then I got an audition for this Disney Channel show that nobody really knew about. It was called The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. And it was for like the 4th or 5th episode. And it was for this goofy janitor. And I have a whole story about that, but I'm going to let you guys ask more questions and maybe it'll lead back. But I ended up booking that, and that is what I've been most recognized for my entire life. And when I booked it, my manager or my agent at the time told me not to take it.
Wow.
This is a story I've only told recently, that they were like, don't do this. This is a kid's show. You don't want to do this. And I was like, I'm not doing anything else next week. And I really like the people that were there. And it's musical theater energy, which I love, because kids television is musical theater. That's the equivalent. Yeah. And so I went and did it, and I ended up being spun off into my own show that we shot a pilot, and Selena Gomez played my niece. And it really was something that's been a wonderful memory and led to a lot of opportunities, and has given me an audience of, 20-somethings and 30-somethings that all know me. I was at In-N-Out yesterday. They were like, "Yay!" Like.
We are definitely going to get to that. But that's a huge cult following. On average, how many times do you get recognized throughout the week?
Every time I go out.
Really?
Pretty much. I mean, you My kids are really attuned to it because since they were little, all of their friends knew me. You know, it wasn't like I was famous to adults and kids are oblivious to it. I was famous to their friends and to a lot of people that were a little older than them that they looked up to, like kids that were a couple years older than them. And they would come to my kids and be like, hey, is your dad on Sweet Life, or is your dad on Nicky Ricky or whatever show I was on? And so when they were little, when people would recognize me, they'd get really close to me. It was like they were forming a little protective barrier around me. It was the cutest. It was the cutest thing ever.
That's adorable.
Yeah, so a lot. I mean, it's, and I'm kind of I've done a lot of stuff, so people don't know why they know me. It's like, did I go to high school with you? No. Right. Did you grow up in Arizona? No. Yes, you did. You grew up in Arizona, and I went to high school with you. It's like, no, I didn't.
It's funny you mentioned Chicago because I still remember, because I spent 10 years in Chicago and I loved it. And I guess that's probably the next logical place from Cleveland if you're in the Midwest.
Yes. Especially if, I was kind of a unicorn because I was there with Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch and Horatio Sanz. That was the group that I was there with. So we all came up at the same time. And they
and Pasquazi, right? You know Dave Pasquazi?
Yeah. And TJ Jagodowski was my roommate for 3 years. He's like one of those people where you're like, well, I'm never going to be able to do that. He's such an amazing improviser.
That's incredible. So how long did you tour with Second City?
Well, like I said, I was kind of a unicorn because I did musical theater and Second City and commercials and voiceover. So I was doing a lot. I toured with them for about a year. And that was when I won the Jeff Award. I was doing Me and My Girl at the same time as I was touring with Second City. And I just felt like I could stay here and wait to try to get on main stage. Or I could move now and just go to LA. And I just felt like it was time to go. But my dad told me, I remember when I was, my dad sold business forms in Ohio. In what city?
Cleveland.
And he was just an awesome guy. And I remember telling him I got an interview with an agent, probably the best agent in Chicago at the time, who I'm still with 30 some years later, because they're in LA. And he said, what do they do there? He knows nothing about the business. I go, well, they do commercials and voiceover. What's voiceover? Oh, it's like, radio commercials, TV commercials. All right, you tell them that if they want to sign you on camera, you tell them they have to sign you for voiceover. And I was like, Dad, what are you telling me? He goes, well, you need to do everything. You're not going to be able to survive on one thing. And so I found myself in that interview. And at the end of the interview, they're like, all right, well, that was great. And I said, one more thing. I'd really like to do voiceover. And they went, okay. And then I had a career in voiceover. And that was because of my dad, who just knew instinctively, man, you need to be able to do a ton of stuff. So that's what I did. I did voiceover, I did commercials, I did Second City, I did musical theater. I did everything. And it I think it hurt me a little bit at Second City because Second City, you have to spend a lot of time there. There is some politics to it. There's some, and I just wasn't there all the time. I was working, doing other things, but it was an awesome experience.
I definitely mentioned that about the dad.
Yeah, sorry,
guys, don't fight over me. Stop fighting over me, okay? You're both pretty.
But I just said my dad, who's not in the business at all, who's a journalist, a sports journalist, his whole career, has given me incredible advice at various times, and advice that I never would have expected from him. When I was moving back to America, before I went to Chicago, when I was at home working a sales job that I fucking hated, and I got a kids play. It was a tour of a kids play, and it was less money than the sales job I was working. And there was a deadline on me coming back to America because I had to, you have to come in within a certain time to keep the green card. And I said, what do I do? Thinking he's go, well, you need the money, so keep the sales job. And he goes, you want to be an actor, don't you? And I said, oh yeah. He goes, well, act. And I was like, oh yeah.
What a
gift.
Did
the kids play, had a great time.
Oh, your dad, what a dude.
It was brilliant. It was the exact right advice at the right time, and so simple.
That's my. I was watching the Tonys once when I was in high school or college, and my dad, our dads had no connection to the business, right? Like he's just not that. And I got up in the middle of it and left. I don't like watching awards ceremonies; they just bother me. I just can't do it. I don't know if it's a FOMO thing or if it's I don't know what it is, but I just can't do it. And so I went out of the kitchen. I'm making a sandwich or making ice cream or whatever, and my dad kind of wanders out after me. And he puts his hands on the counter. I remember him leaning there and he goes, if I had the talent, I'd have to try. Like,
I love it. That's amazing. Yeah. That is amazing.
Yeah. Same thing though. Like that moment where your dad just kind of sees what you don't. They can go to 30,000 feet where you're down in the muck.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So Going back to LA, how many years, like how hard was that transition from a lot of success in Chicago? You're touring, you had your one-man show. What was the LA journey before you hit Sweet Life with Zack and Cody?
That is a great question. It was horrible. So when I drove out in January, which is not the best time to. I literally shoveled about 2 feet of snow off my car so that I could load it with my stuff. My girlfriend, now wife, was touring in the musical Cats, in the national tour of Cats, and she took the week off to come and help me move. So she came to Chicago. I packed my car, drove to the airport to get her, and we were going to start our drive. And just the drive was awful. The car broke down. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And my first few years here, I was living in this horrible apartment because a friend of mine had recommended living in Hollywood because it was central, and it was terrible advice for someone like me who grew up in Cleveland via Chicago. I needed a neighborhood, like I needed a coffee shop and a nice place. Hollywood was just depressing, and the apartment was like this cookie cutter, horrible cockroaches. I'd go into the kitchen, turn on the light, and the cockroaches would go into the disposal. It was not fun. I was working. I mean, I was booking commercials. The strike hit, and that wiped me out because I was one of the 0.001% who made a living doing commercials and voiceover. And we went on strike for 7 months, and all the production went to Canada, and it just shut me down. It was really bad. I ended up booking a couple spokesperson things. One was for a company called Dex Media, and it was a phone book. I have it in here. So I was the personification of a phone book. So in the commercials, wherever you would find a phone, you'd find me.
Amazing.
Right? So I always wore that. I still have the tie. And I loved that, the people that I worked with. I loved the agency. I loved the client. And they aired in the Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, and the Southeast. New York and LA never saw it, which was good. I had that gig for 7-8 years, a contracted gig, and it was huge financially for me. It really helped me. So that was good. And then my life out here didn't really start until my wife moved out. She was doing a show on Broadway. She did the revival of Follies. And after that, she was like, I'm ready. I want to start a family. And I said, all right. So I got a ring and asked her to marry me. And she moved out to LA, and we bought a little house in Valley Village in North Hollywood out here. And that's when my life out here got great. As soon as she was out here, it was like, okay. But that 3 years was the worst 3 years of my life. Like, it was very lonely and difficult. And whenever I hear about someone who's just moved to LA, I just want to hug them, because it's, I've compared LA to, like, what's LA like? I'd be like, well, imagine that you make forks, that you have a fork that you make, and you're super proud of it. And you move to a city where everyone makes forks. Everyone represents forks. Everyone develops forks. Everyone makes things to go around a fork to make it better. There are forks on every billboard that are better than your fork. That's what it's like living in LA.
That was my experience.
That's a nice juxtaposition, because we have varying degrees of how much we love LA. And I would argue moving to LA is even tougher now with the way that the industry is and how segmented it is than it was back then. So pretty rough time for LA right now.
It's a tough time for the business right now. And because of the pandemic, you can audition from home. Now our phones are so advanced that you can shoot an audition. Like look at us on this podcast. This is better quality than we could have ever done back when I moved to LA. I mean, you can audition from anywhere. You don't have to live in LA. Everything's really up in the air. I'll be curious when the dust settles in a few years where we're all standing.
Side note, you picked a great spot, Valley Village. That's where I lived for years.
Yeah, I love it here.
It's such a great part of LA. It's my favorite part of LA. So let's talk. Can you kind of briefly talk about what that experience was, getting your first series regular, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and then it all kind of just built momentum after that?
You ready for this? They did 99 episodes of The Sweet Life. I was in 27.
Oh, wow.
And I was a guest star. And I did not get paid very much at all. So I have made very little money from that job. Like less than 99% of other things that I have done. So that wasn't really a series regular. What it was the first time since I had moved to LA where I had people in positions, I don't want to say of power, where they could employ me that loved me. It was the first time that I had the writers on that show take me aside and go, you need your own show. Like, this isn't normal, what's happening. Because I came in, so I'll tell that story. So when I auditioned for that role, they originally had it broke big, burly, fat, hairy Hagrid type. That's who that character was supposed to be, a big kind of oaf. And they weren't finding it. And so I get called because the casting kind of knew me. I probably had auditioned for him a few times. And I walked into the waiting room and I'm looking around going, what am I doing here? I don't look like these guys. I wonder what conditioner that guy uses. These are the thoughts going through my head. And so I go into the room, and instead of making him kind of a lumbering oaf, I made him a hyper savant. I made him super high energy and kind of crazed. And I remember finishing the audition for the head writer and another writer, and it was dead silent. And they looked at each other, and one said to the other, "Can we do that?" And the other one was like, "Yes." And that's how I got that role. And then when I got in there that first episode, they literally, while I was taping the episode, like, you need to have your own show. And, a year and a half later, we were shooting Housebroken. We were shooting the spinoff.
That's really interesting. So that, like, which suggests a real confidence in what you do. Did you, have you always had that confidence in what you do? Have you always, I mean, it like, it's an understanding of a character that, obviously nobody else had, or a way of looking at it that even the writers didn't have. So is that something that you cultivated, or did you always have that sort of way of looking at things? That's
I think that it was because that genre was very familiar to me. It was musical theater energy, and I had just 3 years prior won a Jeff Award for music. Like, that was what I did. And Second City was, I did a lot of, the characters that I do at Second City were always the more elevated, higher stakes characters. So that environment felt very, very at home to me. I was very comfortable in it. It's amazing, and I don't know that directors or writers realize this, but when you give positive feedback to an actor, like when you really let them know we love what you're doing, it can fuel us for years. Like, literally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what was happening. I was improvising and doing stuff, and they were like, freaking great, we love it. But I was improvising within the genre and the given circumstances and the characters and the relationships, right? Like, I wasn't doing crazy stuff. I was doing something because this guy, has certain character thoughts that are not normal. And then, they're off the beaten path. And so I kind of went with that, and I was getting this positive feedback. I was like, all right, I get what this is now. I'm just going to keep throwing shit out. And you guys just tell me if you want me to stop or whatever. And they always let me go. Always.
Was that on the page? And how much did you veer and just say, this feels a little more like my take on the character?
So I knew what the genre was, right? It's kids multicam. So the stakes are going to be very, very, very high about very, very dumb things. That's a given. I knew that. I knew the relationship that he was kind of he was maturity-wise at the same level as the kids, as the boys. And that spoke to me in kind of a way of, all right, I'm going to honor this genre by making the stakes very, very high. I'm going to make this guy kind of awkward around people. He's like a child. When we spun the character off, the log line that I wanted them to use was, I wanted to call it Raising Arwen. And they ended up calling it Housebroken, but I wanted it to be Raising Arwen, and then living with a 12-year-old with 35 years experience was the subtitle. And that's what he was. He was a 12-year-old with 35 years experience. Listen, it didn't say lumbering. It just described the physicality of the character. So I just thought, that's not me, and I'm just going to make him super, super high stakes and quirky and fun.
Getting into the nuts and bolts a little bit. So you're recurring as a guest star through many episodes and showing up for the show, knowing that you were kind of underpaid. Were you missing out on other opportunities? Were you a little resentful?
Oh, no. I loved that building. I loved going there. I loved it. I mean, I loved the boys. I loved all the writers. I loved that cast. I just, it was, whenever any of us see each other, it's like home. I really believe that. It was just such a, and I had the advantage
That's
of,
awesome.
if there was any drama, and I wasn't privy to it because I wasn't there all the time. So when I showed up, it was, Brian's here. It was like this, woohoo, you know what I mean? So I also got that energy when I would show up, right? Because it was, hey, it's an Arwen episode, and everybody got excited that Arwen was coming.
It's kind of nice that way. Less pressure
Yes.
on you. You get to be the fun party guy.
Absolutely, which is what Arwen is. So I did not feel any resentment. I did know I was being very much underpaid. I mean, it was like cable minimum, weekly minimum. It was like $1,500 when I started. Like, it was really low back then. I think, and I could be speaking out of turn, but I think what happens is, I think those networks make their own deals with the unions, where they can run episodes a certain amount of times on cable before they have to pay another residual. So if it's 37 times,
Right.
they'll run it 36 times. And then they'll put it away for 2 years until the times run out, and then they'll start it again. So I made no money in residuals, like nothing, like a couple bucks here and there. But that show wasn't about that for me. That show it's been a gift. Like, I love it when 20-some guys. So I'm in Albuquerque shooting a TV show, and we have a rap party, and it's at this bowling alley. It's not in a great part of town in Albuquerque. And I get there, and there's two huge dudes that are at the door because they needed security. And so I was like, great. So I go in, and I'm in saying hi to people and everything. And I come out, they had a food truck outside, and I go to the food truck, I get food, and I come back in, and one of the guys goes, excuse me. And I look up, and I was like, yeah. And he goes, were you Arwen on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody? And I go, yeah. And he goes, dude, we grew up on that show. Like, they turned into 8-year-olds. It was the greatest thing that these two tough dudes were just like, and I get that happens a lot, and I wouldn't trade the world for that. So no resentment at all. None at all.
No, it doesn't sound
That's
like it. Didn't
amazing.
sound like it hindered you even, at all at the time. It didn't sound like there's any.
I don't think so. And as far as conflicts with other things, you can't think about that stuff. It'll.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could have held out and been like, no, I'm going to wait for something serious, but I wanted to work. I liked working, and I liked that environment, and I was building an audience. And I didn't even think about it then. I remember them telling me, you're not going to be able to walk through a mall. And that's literally, that happened. I mean, I went on vacation with my family at Hilton Head with my big extended family. And it was the first time any of us had seen it, where we were out on in the harbor town where there's a lighthouse, and somebody was playing guitar, and a couple kids saw me, and all of a sudden it just turned into a melee. It was just like all these kids totally turned away from the guitar player. He was like, what is going on? And I was taking pictures with hundreds of my extended family were like, what? They thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever seen. I thought it was. I was like, I can't believe this. It was crazy at the time.
This is awesome.
Amazing.
Brian, just so you know, Hilton Head is where I spend every summer vacation with my family.
I freaking love, when I was a kid, that's where we went. I haven't been back in years. It is one of my favorite places.
This is actually a great transition. You crossed so many genres. Obviously, you started out in theater, comedy. We're talking about voiceover. You've done Young Sheldon. You've done 1 hour drama. Can you talk a little bit about expectations you had as an actor, as far as, did you have a goal as far as what type of acting you wanted to do?
No, I wanted to be a working actor. I wanted to be able to own a home and raise my family. And I was going to, if I had to have a lot of tools in my tool belt so that whatever opportunity came up, I was ready for it. So if it was single camera drama, I understand how to audition for that. I understand what that feels like. I compare it to a baker. Like, a baker can make cakes, they can make pies, they can make bagels, they can make bread. And as an actor, you got to know how to do kids multicam, kids single cam, network multicam, Chuck Lorre multicam, which is different than network multicam, single cam network comedy, single camera theatrical comedy. They're all different genres that you have to have you have to be extremely, you just have to watch a lot of it and see what the tone is and be able to be in the right tone when you're auditioning for it. So my goal wasn't, I would have loved to have been on a show like Friends. Like, I think I was built for a network sitcom, and I just came in a little too late. I was just
Oh, that's
a little
interesting.
too late for
Yeah.
it, and I also wasn't ready for it. Even when I was doing Sweet Life, I wasn't ready for that network sitcom yet. It
Right.
took me a long time because I was in Chicago. I didn't have anyone to teach me, and I was just trying to survive doing Second City and musical theater. And at the time, I was the poor man's Jim Carrey. So whenever the commercial would come up, they're like, we want a Jim Carrey type. And I could fucking do Jim Carrey. Like, if you want Jim Carrey, I can give you Jim Carrey. I can give you my version of it. To the point where when I was in LA, I auditioned to do the scratch voice for Jim Carrey in a feature film, animated film for DreamWorks called Over the Hedge. And I ended up booking
Yes.
it because I could do his energy. And I met my writing partner and good friend who directed the film, Tim Johnson. He wrote and directed Ants. He did Home. He did Sinbad. He's a genius. And I met him, and I would go in once a week into DreamWorks, go onto their campus, and I would go in and record 25 pages of dialogue. And then they would bring Jim in, and they asked me to come in and read opposite Jim. So I would come in and be his reader.
Wow.
So I had already done all of the lines he was doing. And so he would come in and I would do all the other voices, and I would act opposite him. And that was a frickin'
wow.
education. And then they started bringing me in for everybody else. So Garry Shandling I got to know because I worked with him all the time. I found myself in a room once with Carl Reiner, John Goodman, Dom DeLuise, and
Wow.
Gary Marshall. And it was those guys and me. And it was a show called Father of the Pride that DreamWorks did. It was an animated TV show for prime time. And they had all these names come in, and they brought me in to read opposite everybody. So I got to sit in a room and read with all of these A-list actors, like tons of them.
That's
and
incredible.
see how they worked and Tim might be the best director I've ever worked with. His ability to direct vocal performance, he's so bright that he would use metaphors and similes and ways to connect with people that were just so brilliant. And I got to watch him do that. So then when I started directing, I stole from him. It was such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like, I mean, from hearing you talk about it, it doesn't sound like you ever felt intimidated in those environments or, ever.
One time, I worked with Dick Van Dyke. I worked with everybody. But the one time, so on Over the Hedge, they had a character that was an owl, and they cast Gene Wilder.
Oh.
So I'm like, what the fudge? So I go to the studio, and Garry Shandling comes in just to meet Gene Wilder. So Garry comes in. We record a couple lines with Garry because he's there, and then Gene comes in. And Gene is this gentle, amazing soul. He's exactly what you want him to be. Dick Van Dyke too, by the way. And he comes in and he says, so I did a little research on owls, and I wrote a little poem that I thought we might be able to use. And everybody's like, okay, Gene Wilder. And I just happen to have it.
Oh.
The reason I have it is because he finished that poem, and we all were crying because it was about Gilda. And we were all like, oh my God, it was beautiful. He finishes it, and I may read this for you. I don't know that I should. But we finish it, we go to lunch. And I find myself in a room with Jeffrey Katzenberg, Tim Johnson, Garry Shandling, and Gene Wilder, and me in a corner eating my corned beef sandwich. And they're all telling stories. And Gene tells the story about how in Willy Wonka, I don't know if you know this story about the beginning of the movie. He said they sent me the script, and I read it, And I came back to the producers the next day and I said, I'll do it, but only on one condition. And they said, what? He said, at the beginning of the film, I want him to come out with a cane. And then I want him to do a somersault and jump up. And they were like, okay, Gene Wilder, that's fine. But why? And he said, because from that moment forward, no one will know whether he's lying or telling the truth.
Ooh,
if
brilliant.
you think about that movie, it sets up the rest. As soon as he does it, you're like, oh, this guy's, we can't trust him. It's fantastic. Yeah. So he tells that story. I got to hear him tell the story. And then he turns to me and he goes, so how did you end up here? And I said, well, I'm from a town called...
Go ahead, Rían.
Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland, Ohio. And I said, when I was about 11 years old, my parents knew that I liked to perform. And so they flew with me to LA. They wanted me to see LA. And we went to a taping of the Johnny Carson show. And we went to see a taping of the Garry Shandling show. And the guest star in Garry Shandling was Gilda Radner. And I'm now sitting in this room with the two of you. It was the coolest thing ever.
Wow.
So that is amazing.
Cut to about 3 years ago, I'm talking to my friend Tim Johnson, who directed that film. And he goes, man, I wish somebody, had picked up that piece of paper on that music stand. I was like, yeah, I know. And so I was cleaning out my files, I think over the pandemic. And I found a file called Over the Hedge. And this was in it.
Wow.
I had picked it up.
So you don't remember taking it?
Nope.
You just,
I took it, put it in the file,
Incredible.
And I forgot about it. So it is dated January 26, 2003. So I know the date that we did it. It has his handwriting in the margins. And the gist of it is it's a poem about him talking about his mate for life, his owl mate for life. And he basically says, and one day some kid shot her with a BB gun. And now I'm alone. And I just sit in the tree by myself. And all the other animals say, well, don't worry, there'll be someone else. And I just say, who?
Wow.
And the last line is, people think I'm such a wise old owl, but I'm really not. I just keep my mouth shut.
That is incredible.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Wow. Well,
damn.
It's hard to even process all. So that experience, even just, reading lines with Jim Carrey, you said that was an education in itself. Can you talk a couple, if there's any lessons that you still remember working with any of those comedy greats?
Wanda Sykes came in and she played the skunk in Over the Hedge. And one of the things I learned from her is I said to her at one point, I said, can I ask you a question? She said, what? I said, in your stand-up, what percentage of stuff that you write now gets into your set compared to when you started? And she went, oh. She goes like 80 or 90% now, but when I started, it wasn't much. So like the learning curve for her, she kind of had for all that experience, she kind of knew what jokes would kind of work and kind of wouldn't. Her filter got really good. And I remember her enjoying that question. I remember she was like, oh, and she really thought about it.
That's a great lesson. She became more efficient as she went on.
Yeah. What I learned from Jim Carrey was no fear. He went for it. And if 80% of the stuff he came up with didn't make the cut, who gives a crap? The 20% was brilliant, and that's what's going to make the cut. So he just took chances. Yeah. And that's what I kind of did at the time. That was kind of my thing when I would improvise. And any commercials I did, I was improvising in. Most of the commercials I booked because I brought something to it, that I was improvising and doing extra stuff. I probably did 100 some commercials in my career, and I probably improvised my way into 80% of them. I don't know that I would have booked them otherwise.
It's interesting about the lack of fear thing. I felt like in some ways when I moved to LA, I had less fear than I do now, like out of sheer ignorance. Yeah. Because when you talk about savvy and you talk about learning things, I was so naive when I came out here. Like I'd never been to America before I moved out to LA, and I just came straight to LA, 25 years old, no idea, so green. But in that ignorance, managed to blag my way into meetings I'd no business getting into, emailing one of the casting directors at Warner Brothers, going, "Great to meet you the other night. What time should I come in?" And like, having never met him, and him emailing back on Tuesday, and me going to the studio. And,
That's a great story. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm still in contact with him. Things like that. I got brought up to the set of Scrubs by one of the actors, John C. McGinley, who was very generous to me in Ireland, that I had met, and all of these things that I kind of stumbled my way into, but so naive and so ignorant that only now I'm like, oh, there's so much more to this thing to learn.
Dude, that's such a crazy brave thing to do, to move to a different freaking country and pick the most intimidating city in the country to go to.
Yeah.
That's brutal, man. Wow. My sister and I do a podcast called Here From There, and we talk to people about how they started.
We're going to talk about it. Yeah, it's great.
Their stories are all kind of like that when you're young, you just don't know any better. And Allison Munn had my favorite story, and she was, I think, our first or second guest, and to this day, it is my favorite story. She did an audition for like regional musical theater. So you go to like a big open call where all of the producers from all of the theaters for 100 miles are there. And you do like a general, you sing a ballad, you sing an up-tempo, maybe you do a monologue, and then you wait 3 hours, and then you go to a board and you see who called you back. And then you go to individual rooms to go to callbacks for that theater, and maybe you get on summer stock and you have a job for the summer. That's kind of how it worked. And so she did this, I think in the Southeast, I think, and she goes and auditions. And she is this beautiful, petite little blonde girl. And I can't imagine when she was 19 how cute she was. Like, she must have looked like she was 12 because even now she looks like she's 25. So it just makes no sense.
Right.
So she didn't get called back by a dinner theater that was near her hometown that she loved and frequented all the time. So this little spunky, cute blonde girl goes to the room where they're having callbacks and knocks on the door. And they open the door and they go to this little pipsqueak and they go, "Can I help you?" And she goes, "Well, I grew up," and she probably had her little drawl going on. She said, "I grew up just a little bit from your theater and I went to it all the time. And I noticed you didn't call me back. And I just wanted to make sure there isn't anything available." And he goes, "Sing something." And she was like, "Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da," did her little thing right outside the door. And he went, "Okay, come on in." And she booked that summer, and 5 more summers she worked there.
That's awesome.
Because she went and knocked on the door. But like, I as an old man would never do that now. Like, I don't know that I'd have the guts to do that. Like, you start to see as you get older, you have to keep that kind of attitude of, well, just try. They're looking for help.
Yeah.
This is exactly where I was going to go with this, because as you learned, you had a lot of success, but as you learn more, you're also a teacher at Lesly Kahn. You learned a lot of new things to the toolkit. So you would say that you have gotten a little more gun shy as you've gotten older and a little more wiser?
Listen, listen, between you guys and me, because no one else is going to hear this, right? I am.
No.
Yeah, how'd you know?
We have 2 listeners. It's just me and E-Kan.
I am filled with anxiety. Like, I am a very anxious guy. I do think I have, people throw this around a lot, but I really do have ADD, where I will literally find myself in a different room like I've been transported by an alien, where I'm like, I was just working on something and now I'm in the backyard. So I have to constantly check myself and remind myself what I've done, because I will fall back into that 17-year-old mind where I'm like, well, I haven't done anything. It's like, no, you've actually done a ton of stuff. And you could probably call Chuck Lorre and be like, I've got an idea for a show. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, bring Brian in. But like, you just don't think that way because you're so in that early 20s mindset of just getting your ass handed to you and having no power and having no recognition. And it's very easy to stay in that mindset. It's just, and you can't. You're a business. You have to run your career like a business. You guys had a guest on, I watched a couple, I forget his name, but he was like working it. And I watched about 10 minutes of it and I was like, this guy's great.
It was Sean
Brandon?
Shandling?
Yes, maybe that's it. It was somebody that was very, very savvy about creating opportunities for himself.
Yes, that was
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that answers any questions or what the hell the question was.
No, it absolutely does. I just wanted to ask you as well, because, in all the genres we've talked about, you also, worked with Michael Bay and like did blockbusters at the very highest level. How was that transition? Was that something that you just felt, okay, yeah, this is just the next.
Well, like the dream is like to go to a movie theater and see that Universal logo come up and the frickin' letters come around the side and think to yourself, I'm going to be in this. Like that's the dream, right? Like that's what's from the time you're a little kid when I went and saw E.T. or Back to the Future and I see that logo come up and it's bigger than life. And you just like, man, I'm going to be in something that starts like that. That was the first thing. But I met Michael doing a commercial, and fortunately at that
awesome.
point, Michael really loves to laugh, and I really and he liked the energy that I had, like my kind of high stakes energy. He really liked, and so I did a Jeep commercial with him, and we had a little disagreement on set, and which I've told this story. I'm not going to tell it on this, but we had a little disagreement on set.
Yeah,
and
it's a great story,
yeah.
and I'm glad I
yes, and I just stood up for myself, and he then put me in everything he did for 5 years. So he just was like, hey, I'd get a call, Brian, Michael Bay wants you to be in this movie, The Island. He wants you to come to his office. So I went to his office, sat across from him, read a couple lines with him. He was like, great, and then I was in The Island. And then in the middle of shooting The Island, this was with Spielberg. So he had gone to Spielberg. So apparently Spielberg had been watching the dailies, and he was like, you need a sympathetic character to die at the end of Act 2. So they chose me. And all of a sudden, one night, I get pages where I have an entire scene with Sean Bean, and then he frickin' murders me. And I was like, what? I mean, I was just like comic relief. Like I was in a couple scenes here and there, and all of a sudden I had this scene. And so I show up, and Sean Bean comes to my room, and he's asking me about it. And I was like, yeah, I saw a bug. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, but we're supposed to be in this facility underground that doesn't have any contact. Everything up above is dead, and they're lying to us. And I see a bug. And if anybody finds out there's something living on the planet, then their whole thing goes to hell. So he ends up murdering me. And a good story about this one is he stabs me in the neck with a syringe. And on the first take, his assistant comes in, Sean Bean's character's assistant comes in and opens a steel case, and in it are like 5 syringes with needles about 8 inches long. And on the first take, we go through the whole scene. He reaches in, grabs one of the syringes, takes his arm back, and I went, cut! And Michael, I was like, and that's a big deal to do that. And Michael starts laughing. He goes, you don't know if that's a real one or a fake one. And I was like, you're damn right. I said, I want to see it. And so Michael was great. He comes in, he goes, all right, let's lock in the ones and make sure the real ones are locked in. Show Brian the needle. So they showed it to me. So I knew that it was fake before they did it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we shot the scene. I was supposed to do that froth thing. I was so excited they were going to put like an Alka-Seltzer and, whatever in my mouth. And then Michael's like, we don't need to see him die. He'll just fall off. And so I was like, damn it. But what I did learn that day about film acting from Sean Bean was I was in the scene with Sean, and he's very, very quiet. He's not really doing much. And he feels very low status in the scene. And I realized, he's playing my character. He's going, oh, really? You saw a bug? Really? He's the bad guy, right? Sean Bean's status, stillness, all this stuff. And with me, he was going, really? And I'm like, what does he do? And I realized, he's conning my character to make him feel freaking at ease. So I would tell him.
Yeah.
So after he kills me, he stands up, turns to his lieutenants and says, I need this, 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 and this. So I go over, I'm standing next to the focus puller at the monitor. So the focus puller, for people who are listening, is they can pull focus on a camera remotely, so they can do it from a different place. And so they sit at the monitor and they watch it, and they pull focus as the person moves closer and farther from camera. So I am sitting next to the focus puller, and frickin' Sean Bean turns. He's in a Michael Bay close-up, chin to mid-forehead, gives his order, and I looked at the focus puller, and he just looked at me and goes, I know. There was just fucking something about Sean Bean in total stillness that was the most powerful, crazy. You can just see that's a freaking movie star. I don't know if it's the structure of his face. I don't know. He was brilliant at being still. That's the one thing I've really learned from the A-list actors that I've worked with, that their stillness is, even in real life, like Bruce Willis. I worked with Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis took Jim Carrey's spot on Over the Hedge. So I worked with Bruce a ton. And he's still in real life. Like these A-list guys, the Brad Pitts, all those guys, when you watch them in interviews, they're kind of still guys in real life. They don't move a lot. They're kind of still naturally. guys like me that came up doing musical theater, I have to really think about being still. It's a conscious thought.
No, but that's good because I loved one of the revelatory moments for me was when we did scenes from Edge of Tomorrow in class with you, and that blew my mind. And so to those who don't know, Edge of Tomorrow is a brilliant action movie with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, and I hadn't seen the movie, and then I watched it afterwards, and everything that you had, everything we talked about and everything you kind of gave us, and that really clicked for me, and I went, oh my God. Like, it was just a mind opener where I was like, the stillness and the power in that.
You also had a moment in class too where you were playing, I don't know if it was that scene or a different one, where we got your stillness locked in and then we lowered your register a little bit. Do you remember that?
It was that one. Yeah,
it was that one. And you completely changed. It was a night and day lesson. And it's why I don't like teaching on Zoom. I did a seminar on Zoom a couple nights ago, and I just don't like it because I like the person who's performing to feel and hear and see the effect they're having on the people in the room when they get it right. Because being still is not natural. And I want to teach people to make it a weapon, something that they use consistently and aggressively. And the only way to do that is for them to see it working. Because I'll turn, and you've seen me do this in class, I'll turn and I said, was that better? And everybody's like, yes, that was amazing. I want to reinforce that into that actor, that be still. You can have all your character thoughts. It's all there. Just be still. The camera's right on you, man. It's not normal for us in real life to be a foot from someone's face. In a movie, we can do it, and we can do it on a huge, huge platform. So we don't need to do anything. You don't need to do anything.
That's incredible. What a great lesson right there.
Brilliant.
So, Brian, before we move on, so when you're Sean Bean's about to stab the syringe and you yell cut, that wasn't a joke. You weren't making a joke. You were actually, hey guys, can we talk about this syringe?
I was dead serious, but making a joke of it. So I wasn't like, cut.
Okay.
I was like, oh, hey, cut. I was like, hold on. I did it as kind of like I don't know what's going on. And Michael knew exactly he knew exactly, and he caught into it. He didn't care. He was like, I get it.
Yeah, that's great, because I think that's a great lesson for actors when we're dealing with whatever props on set. I was in a TV show. I was branded. I was a Korean gangbanger being branded, and they actually needed to brand and burn an iron that was going to be branded in me. So sure enough, I was going to know which one was the real one that was being heated up, and then the one that was going to be on me. But I think that's just a good lesson that, hey, if no one's yelling cut and someone's, might be in danger.
Listen, sets are a very dangerous place. In the island, there was a scene where I just told this story the other night, where I was standing in an elevator, and the back of the elevator was a giant sheet of glass. It was about an inch thick. It was maybe 8 feet tall by 7 feet wide. It was really big because they were going to project stuff in post onto it. And I'm standing in the elevator, in the back of the elevator, and there's like 8 or 9 extras, and Ewan McGregor is up in the front, and there's dialogue going on, and I'm like chirping because I'm annoyed by something, just comic relief, just chirping stuff out. And I'm wearing a bodysuit. Anyone's seen The Island, we wear these like super tight, very fitted, had to wear a G-string in that thing. That's not fun. And so there's nothing, it's just like your skin. And so between takes, I leaned back on the glass. We're 30 feet up. It's a working elevator built at Downey Studios. They built the whole thing. And the glass was not secured. So I started falling out of the elevator with this 1-ton piece of glass that falls out behind me. And an extra happened to be facing me and reached out and grabbed my collar right here with their finger.
Oh my God.
And pulled me back in. And the glass hit the ground like a bomb. And luckily there was no one under there. There was crew everywhere. Like, it was probably a 2% chance there was no one down there. And it hits the ground, it explodes. Everybody's like, what the hell? And just this extra and I, maybe 1 or 2 other people, knew what just happened, right? So Michael comes into the elevator immediately, walks in, looks over the edge, goes, all right, we can shoot without it. Let's roll.
And I've heard that story before, and it still gives me anxiety when I hear it again.
Yeah, sets are dangerous.
Wild.
You got to really advocate for yourself and make sure that everything's safe, and really talk to your stunt coordinator about things. Go through. Don't be like, yeah, I'll get it. Do it. Like, do it in slow motion a few times. Like, I don't care how simple it is. do it, because you don't know when when your adrenaline gets going on a take and another actor's adrenaline gets going, things go about an inch farther than they typically do. Like, unless you've really done rehearsals. But with like episodic television, they're not going to do a lot of rehearsals for stuff. They're like, yeah, you fall over the desk, or, you know, an explosion happens, you go back onto a mat.
I talked to an actor and she was doing a scene and someone improvised kicking a chair, kicking a chair. It just happened to go right at her knee and she busted her knee open. So Brian, can we kind of talk about the transition to Lesly Kahn? You do have a great story. If anyone hasn't listened to your podcast, hear from there. You do have a great story with Lesly, but if you can kind of talk about what that introduction was like.
So I had reached a point in my career where I had done the pilot, the spin-off pilot. It did not get picked up. Because I'd been working so much at Disney and had been doing this other thing, Dex Communications, that I was a spokesperson for, I was pretty busy. And so I had kind of lost relationships with the commercial world. And the TV film world didn't know me or take me seriously because I had done kid stuff. So it's very hard for casting directors who have been watching you with their kids, seeing you do this over-the-top stuff. They're like, well, he can't do single camera drama. So things had slowed down considerably, and I had no representation. So someone had recommended Lesly, and I just thought, maybe I need to go and check myself and figure out maybe it's me. I don't know. But I needed to do something. So I went and I met Lesly. So when she meets you, you do a little audition for her, and you can either do it with a group or with a small group or by yourself. And I did it with a small group, and it was probably not the smartest thing to do. I showed up, and it was two 20-something girls that had grown up watching me, and they thought I was there to teach it. And I go into the room with them, and I do this scene, and I get about 30 seconds in, and Lesly goes, "Stop." She turns to the girl, and she goes, "Please sit down." She looked at me and she went, "What is going on with you?" And she said to the girls, "He already knows how to do this. I want to know why you're here." And I told her, I said, "Listen, I'm a 40-year-old bald guy, and there's not a big demand for me, and I'm having a tough time right now." She said, "Okay." And so she kind of brought me in, and I went through the whole thing from the beginning. It was like me and a bunch of 20-year-olds. And what was great about it was it put into words things that I already knew that I was doing kind of instinctively. I could put a label on. And it really helped me. It also taught me to slow the fuck down. So the reason that I was so good at DreamWorks doing scratch track and reading with people is, and Tim Johnson will tell you this, he says out of any actor he's worked with, and he's worked with everybody, he's like, no one has been able to come in and read something cold better. Like, I could come in, they would give me pages, and I would first get what they needed. But the problem with that is when you get an audition, I'm like, oh yeah, I get this, and I just do it. And I'm giving a vanilla version of it. I mean, it'll be better than maybe 75% of the people that are out there. But Lesly's kind of taught me to slow the hell down, come up with some character thoughts, and be accurate to the text. Pay attention to what's going on, and honor and play the music as accurately as you possibly can. And that was extremely valuable to me. And also identifying genres very specifically and understanding, hey, when you've been doing Disney Channel for 3 years and then you audition for a single camera drama, you need to be coached, because you are in a completely different, that baker's been making cakes for 5 years. And now you're like, okay, now you have to make a bagel. It's like, I forget how to make a bagel. I've made a bagel in 5 years. All right, well, we're going to remind you how to make a bagel. And so that had a lot to do with it too. But it gave me structure. The most important thing it did, I had spent my entire career on my own. I did not have relationships with other actors. I was in a silo with my agents and managers, who I love, by the way, but agents and managers throughout my career up until now are not my people. They're different. Like, when you go to lunch with a manager or an agent, and they can be pleasant, you can like them, but they're just it's a different mindset. So you don't feel a connection. what I learned there was to surround myself with a community, that I was in a room with other people that were going through what I was going through, that spoke the same technical language about acting as I did, and genuinely wanted to help each other. Genuinely. We can have a little jealousy here and there, but we don't have envy. It's a different thing. So those are the things that Leslie's gave me.
What a great breakdown. There you go. How long did it take for you to start booking other genres, 1-hour dramas after working with Leslie?
Ironically enough, when I first moved here, I just booked single camera drama. I did 6 Feet Under. I did NYPD Blue. That's what I was doing, CSI. Like, I was doing single camera drama. And then I booked Sweet Life, and I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I've been doing this in Chicago for 6 years. I can fucking tear this up. And then I kind of kept doing that, and commercials always seemed to be a little heightened as well. It was like doing commercials at that point were like doing a network multicam. I think, and I'd already done at that point, I think I'd already done Transformers. I'd done The Island. I had done some stuff, and I was lost. I was like, what the hell is happening? I'm good at this, and I can't get anyone to sign me. And I understood it. I actually understood it. I was a middle-aged white guy. They're looking at me going, we can't make money with you. We can't. We're going to make money with the young person that's just coming up, the beautiful, funny. We're looking for the next Jennifer Aniston. We're looking for the next, and I was past my prime. And until I found my current reps who kind of were like, oh no, this guy could explode if we get him in the right thing, the right independent film, the right, recurring role on something. This guy could hit. Still waiting for that, by the way.
any moment. In a way, you became a better craftsman, knowing all the, being more accurate according to genre. You were able to book all different genres, but you just were more in control of your tools.
Yes.
But it also speaks to your self-awareness and willingness to be to look at it and go, okay, well, something needs to change, and take an action on that. Because I think a lot of people don't get to that point.
You can see that when you're trying to direct an actor. There are not many of these at Leslie's. There's like one every once in a while where they fight direction, where they fight ideas. And it's like, we're not here to fight it. We're here to workshop it. So this is an opportunity for you to go, yes, and. Okay, what do you want? Okay, yeah, let's try it. And to be a good teacher, by the way, and a good coach, you have to be willing to go, I was wrong. You tried that on beautifully. It was great. I was totally wrong. Don't do that. And instead of stubbornly sticking with it because you gave that direction, and so now you're going to stick with it. If I put something on an actor in a coaching session, I'm like, nope, that doesn't work. I gave you the wrong thing. That doesn't work. Please stop doing it. It's not your fault. You did it brilliantly. It just doesn't work. You have to be able to do that as a coach and be humble about your own abilities and what you're laying on this actor. It may not work for them.
That's a great transition. Can you talk a little bit about your journey into directing?
Well, I directed musical theater when I was in college, so I was comfortable with the concept of it. I was very, very, very good at it at a very early age. There was something about it that just I got. And then it went away, and I became an actor, and not became an actor, but I focused on acting. And then I started on every project I was on, I would sit very close to the director all the time. And I would talk to the DP, and I'd ask them questions. DPs are awesome. They want to talk about what they do.
Yeah,
if
I love
you want to pick their brain, first of all, they're always so well dressed. They always are very put together, very meticulous, because their job is meticulous. They tend to be very, and so I would pick DP's brains and directors I would sit and watch. And then I booked Nikki, Ricky, Dickie, and Dawn. And I was like, okay, this is going to be, if I'm ever going to direct, this is going to be my shot. So I threw my hat in the ring about midway through season 1. And I had been shadowing directors the whole season, and I'd been coming to every production meeting. So when they'd have a production meeting early on a Wednesday for the following week, I would show up at 8 a.m, and I'd be sitting behind that table at every production meeting, watching how it ran, so that they could see me doing that. I wanted them to know I'm not screwing around. I'm not an actor who's like, I'd like to direct once. Because that takes a job away. That takes a job away from a director who wants to do it for a living. So, and it's something that so many directors say and actors say is don't ever say that. First of all, don't do that. If you want to direct, then direct. But don't say, oh, I'm going to direct an episode just for the heck of it. You just took a job away from a director. Like, why would you? Don't do that. So I was very serious about doing it. I really wanted to. I wanted to make that transition. So shadowed all the time. But what I did differently was I sat with the camera coordinator or the associate director who is in charge of coordinating cameras. Now, the director's supposed to come in with a list of shots and give them to the camera coordinator for multicam. So people who are listening, multicam would be, it's a proscenium. It looks like a stage. You have 4 cameras as you're standing behind the cameras from left to right, they go A, B, C, X. And it's called X because if it was D, it would rhyme with B and everybody would get confused. So they called it X. Used to be 3 cameras, and then Robin Williams did a show called Mork and Mindy, and they're like, we need another camera because we don't know what he's going to do. So they added another camera. That's why there's 4 cameras. So,
oh, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
So there's 4 cameras. Your A and your X on the way ends get all of your coverage, your singles, your over-the-shoulder shots. The 2 in the middle, for the most part, get your masters. So they get like a head-to-toe master, and they'll get like a wide master, right, in case anything physical happens in the scene. So I would sit next to the camera coordinator and look at their script, and I'd say, can I get a copy of your script after you mark it up? He's like, absolutely. So I got scripts from multiple associate directors over the years of all their different ways of camera coordinating, how each one does it. And there was one style that I loved. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And so they all knew that I was doing that. And our showrunner, our head writer, his name's Michael Feldman, and I freaking love that guy. That guy fought for me to direct, like literally got in an argument with the network saying, you have to let him, I will sacrifice my direction, my episode for Brian, so Brian can direct. Because I was already helping with the kids.
Wow.
I was helping with the kids. I've given them advice. I didn't know I was doing it. Someone came up to me and was like, well, you have to direct. You're so good at it. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, well, you're doing it all the time. And I didn't realize that that's just how I did it. I'd kind of teach the kids, if you're stage right, you lean on your right foot. So it pulls you away from the other person so that the camera can get a better shot of you. I was teaching the kids this. So I got my shot and I prepared like crazy. I tried to implement all of the things. As an actor, a lot of the department heads or crew sometimes will come and complain to you about the way things are being run. They'll be like, oh, God, da-da-da. And I wrote all of that stuff down. Like the makeup department's like, I hate it when XYZ happens. All right, I'm going to write that shit down. I'm never doing that. Somebody else come over. I hate it when this happens. Even directors will say, oh, man, when I deal with the network, I always do this because I know not. Wrote that down. So one of the things that I would do, for example, on that front was if the network, when you get notes on an episode and the network gives a note, the next day I go right to that network person and I go, so here's how I dealt with that note. And I let them know before we start shooting. And it puts them at ease. They feel like you've acknowledged them and we don't have to stop and go during the take. So anyway, what Leslie's did was, giving names to things like reversals, which Leslie uses all the time, which is just a brilliant, she has a whole background on that. That's an amazing how she got to that. It's like a Greek word for, it's amazing how she got there. But we'll sometimes call it A side, B side, right? They don't call it a reversal. They call it an A side, B side. So I started calling it a reversal. So I would teach the actors, I'd say, all right, this is a reversal. So on the A side, the character thought has to be the opposite of the B side, especially in kids television. So I think that's where it helped. I mean, I didn't worry about coaching the directors. What I was more worried about was cameras, talking to the network, taking notes, giving notes. How am I going to write stuff down so I don't forget it? In kids television at that time, especially our show, we had very young kids. So the directors were coming in and stopping and going a ton. So in the middle, I'd be ready to give a punchline and they go, okay, hold. All right, we're going to go back. We go back to that. Now, Aiden, I need you to do that line one more time. This time, I want you to be more angry about it. Okay, he does it. Okay, hold. So I'm waiting to come in with my line. It's like, and all the cameras are waiting. Everybody is like a skier at the top of a hill waiting for the beeps to go, and the beeps never stop. It's like beep, 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 and you go. Yeah. It's like the beeps keep going, and everybody gets exhausted by the end of the day because you just can't get through anything. So at the very beginning of my first week, I said to the kids, I said, listen, we're going to shoot the whole scene and we are not going to stop. So you guys need to be off book. And they're like, okay. And I said, and I told our showrunner and I told the network, I said, I'm going to shoot the whole scene and I'm not going to stop. And I rehearsed the crap out of those kids. And I moved quick. I kept them entertained, kept them moving. And so when we shot, they got through the whole take. We'd cut. I'd go to the network. And what notes do you have? They'd write it all down. I had a kid's acting coach that's there. His name was Damon. He was the best. And I could turn to him during a take. I'd be like, write that down. We need to fix this. Okay, that reversal has to be stronger. He'd go, got it. I'd go to the network. I'd get their notes. I'd get the head writer's notes. I'd go back into the set. I'd sit down with the kids at eye level. And I'd go, okay, this is what we need to do. And I would give them character thoughts, and I would have them do free spins, or I'd have them do it in front of me right there. Because what happens is actors do the same thing over and over again, and you can't get out of it. So if an actor's like, yeah, and then they get in, they do it again because they're in the habit of doing it that way instead of the way you want to. So I have them physically do it so that they breaks them out of that in a rehearsal. Then I go back and we run the scene again. We were done 2 hours early. Like, we had been late all the time. I got us so far ahead schedule that the ADs were like, this is awesome. And they started adding scenes from other days. And the network ended up submitting that episode for an Emmy for our show and for a DGA award for that show, for that season, as a representation of our show. And I ended up directing 3 more episodes of the series. Probably should have been more, but for other reasons that didn't happen. But Lesly's helped me because all of those terms and the reversals and builds and things, it gave me a language to be able to talk and get everybody on the same page.
That's incredible. What a lesson in directing right there.
You know, your career, your experience of your career, to me, I love listening to it because it reminds me that, like, you know, and again, this bring my dad into it one more time. He'll love that because he listens to this podcast. But
hi, Dad.
You know, hi, Dad. You know, sometimes, and I get anxious too, but sometimes when I get down on myself and go, I haven't done anything, I have to remember the experiences that I've had in this life and this career have been incredible. My dad said this to me the other day. And my mum and dad have been so supportive and so brilliant at times. My dad said, he goes, but look at what you've done. Look at what you've been able to experience and the people you've worked with and the places it's taken you. He's like, this has been a success. And listening to you talk about these different experiences, I'm reminded of, like, how fucking cool it is to be in this life and this career and to just get to do all these cool things.
It's really great. And directing is every day is a new problem. It's always unique. There's nothing the same every time you direct. And, you know, Lesly gave me a great piece of advice. We were talking about imposter syndrome and how sometimes I get imposter syndrome. I'm like, when we talked about this, like, what am I doing here? Like, and she said, embrace it. You're like, yeah, I'm getting away with this. This is awesome. These people have no idea. I don't know what I'm doing. This is the greatest thing ever. Yeah. And I was like, what a great way to look at it. Like, yeah, all right, embrace it. Yeah, I'm an imposter. Okay, whatever. I made a great living. I live in a house. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Suckers.
I own this house. You know, E-Kan's walking around with a brand that he got from a TV show still on his skin. You know what I mean?
Before we leave the directing, you mentioned Tim Johnson. You learned a lot of tricks. Are there any off the top of your head of just notes and direction that you've heard him give that you implemented in your own directing?
No, because they're all very unique to the situation. He was just very good at taking A-list talent. Man, does he have stories, you guys. His stories, like, you talk about stories, like him working with Russell Crowe and Brad Pitt and all these A-list, like, just the crap that goes down. Like, you can't, I mean, I saw John Goodman lose his temper once because he couldn't get you just see some stuff, and Tim has to rein that in. So Tim, they don't know him. He's not Scorsese or whoever. They're coming in to do this cartoon. And to Tim and to DreamWorks, those cartoons are brilliant. They're like great storytelling, like really top of the pack. And so they come in, and Tim has to kind of earn their respect pretty early on. So his direction has to be smart, intuitive, respectful, sometimes entertaining, disarming. And he can do all of it. He can sit there and just put this person at ease, and they know immediately that he is so bright. I don't think I could do what he does. I just couldn't. He's so smart and so great.
So, Brian, before we leave, can you please tell. I heard a little bit about the story when you did the producers in
Yeah.
Ohio. Can you kind of tell us about what that journey is? Because I just want to hear it.
Oh man. So this is where my anxiety came in. So I had an old friend named Michael Thomas who so when I moved to LA, and then I got a call from Jeff Richmond, who is Tina Fey's husband, who directed me on tour in Chicago. So he knew me. Tina knew me because Tina was amazing. Tina came to every musical I did. She would come. She was just so well-rounded. She just
Wow.
enjoyed theater, and she was special. She was special.
I love her.
She's
I love her.
special. She's just fantastic. So she would come to all the shows I was in because it was an excuse to go see theater, and I know somebody in it, so I'm going to go. And so she knew that I did musical theater, and her husband had written a hilarious Monty Python-esque musical called Hamlet the Musical. And they had done a version of it, and they wanted me to play Laertes, and they were going to do it at the Shakespeare Rep in Chicago on Navy Pier. But it was the summer after I had already moved. So I had moved in January, and they called and they said, would you come play Laertes? We're going to blow the part up. We're going to give you a lot more songs, and we're going to give you a lot more to do. And I was like, sure. So I went back and lived in Chicago with a buddy of mine and got for the summer to live in Chicago. And Michael Thomas co-wrote it with Jeff. And Michael Thomas is this brilliant musician and lyricist. He's the funniest person I know. Funniest person I know. If I text with him, I'm going to laugh out loud the whole time. And so they asked me to come. So I went and I did Hamlet the Musical. So last year I get a call from Michael Thomas. And he goes, are you still at this address? And he said, I'm now artistic director at this theater in Mansfield, Ohio. It's a beautiful old giant theater. And we're going to do the producers. And we want to know if you'll come and play Max Bialystock. And my anxiety went to 15. I haven't done musical theater in 20 some years. There's no way I can. Then I watched the movie. I was like, I can't do that. Like, are you kidding? Like, I was just out of that mode. I haven't done anything like that. And so my sister made me sit down with a calendar. And she said, okay, let's say you have to memorize the whole thing. Let's work out. So I went through it and I realized I could totally do this. So I went to Mansfield. And I rehearsed with these great local and regional actors. Some of them came in from New York, some of them from Chicago, some of them were local high school kids that were in the show. And they all freaked out that I was there. And it was the cutest thing ever because none of them would look at me for like 3 days. And eventually, they started
just the way you like it.
Yeah, no. And then eventually they started talking to me, and it was just, they were the best. And I just loved the cast. And Michael Thomas directed it, and he was a phenomenal director. He was also in it. And so I got to play Max Bialystock and the producers, and it was freaking awesome and an amazing experience. It was exhausting. It was brutally hard. And we did it for a couple weekends, and it ended up being one of my favorite memories and I'm going back. In January, I'm going to do Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. I'm going to play Hysterium, and Jeff Richmond is going to play Pseudolus, the lead.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'll go back for a couple weeks and do another one. And it's just such a joy to go do. And I'm scared to death, by the way, to go back and do it, but I'm just going to do it because I know I've done it once.
The last thing I know we've taken a lot of your time. I just wanted to ask you briefly about, sort of adapting. You seem like a theme of your career seems to be you're adaptable to any kind of genre situation. It's really impressive how you've been able to move through all these things. Starting a podcast, and we talked about it a little bit a few weeks ago, adapting to the way the industry is now and creating your own stuff. Can you talk a little bit about how that started the podcast and getting into the idea that you have to kind of now be your own, producer,
yes,
writer, creator, director.
Oh, that's right. And also social media too.
Yeah. So there's kind of like two things there. So, and I've said in class to our Tuesday night class that unfortunately or fortunately, I think it depends on how old you are, social media is part of our job. Sorry. I just don't think that you can just audition for the most part anymore and have a career. That'll happen. There'll be exceptions to that rule, and there will be people that are brilliant and beautiful and wonderful, and they'll end up with an acting career. But I do think that having some social media is important. It doesn't even have to be about acting, I don't think. I think it just be about something that you love to do. And you stay in class and you keep honing your skills so that when you do get an opportunity that erupts from your social media, you're ready for it. So you walk into an audition for a director's like, they're making me frickin' audition the social media person that talks about birds because they have 1 million followers. And I got to sit in this thing. And then you come on and you're frickin' good, like really good, because you've been studying and you got coached and you have a great setup and you come in and you slay it. And that director's like, what the hell? Yeah, absolutely. Yes. We're casting this person. Or if you audition, there's someone else that's pretty amazing too, but because your social media has 1 million followers and you're good, you get the role. So I do think social media needs to be. Do you guys know Gary V, the guy Gary V? So he just came out with a video. He just came out with a really great video, and he talked about how things are turning into. If you just enjoy doing something, if it's a hobby and you post about it, it can lead to something. That you don't even have to be good at it. You just have to be interested in it and open up questions and be genuine. So I think that's the side of the actor's life that I do think people need to do. And hopefully, your social media can be writing little skits or things that allow you to act because that's something you like to do, and you play a character, you do whatever. So on the podcast thing, I started doing that because of my teaching. So it's not really about money. It was that I was going to Tuesday nights occasionally, not very often, and I would have these moments where everybody would come up to me after class and be like, thank you, and it really just warmed my heart because I just felt like, oh wow, they really got something out of this. And I realized that the people who recognize me, may not know my name, but grew up watching me or whatever, are in their 20s and in maybe their early 30s now, and they're out there struggling and they are trying new things. And I thought, well, maybe I could do a podcast called Here From There, where I talk to people about how they started. And these young people could hear stories about how other people started, even if it was 50 years ago. It doesn't. I mean, I just had Rex Lynn on. Rex Lynn has been around forever. He played the principal on Young Sheldon. He's a Texan, and he came and told his stories. Great story, like how he got going and try to find a common thread through all of these things. And that's why I started the podcast. It's really to inspire people of any age, to take chances and you may find inspiration or an opportunity in a place you never thought you would. I mean, just like what the story you told about it, you sent an email to somebody and all of a sudden, boom. So much of it is putting yourself out there and throwing the line into the water. And if you don't catch anything, who gives a crap?
This is incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why we started this podcast for, the money. And it has been my...
I know. Well, Brian, let me tell you, after this episode...
Oh, yeah.
I don't
think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
But similarly, sorry to cut across you, I'll finish with this, but the best part of this for me, and we've talked about this a lot, is meeting and chatting to people in a format that, like, the chances of me and you sitting down for an hour and a half and talking about your life are slim.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's not really a situation where that happens naturally in the world without some kind of intention behind it. And this has allowed me to talk to a number of people already, and I absolutely love it. I've discovered that, like, talking to people, having guests on is my favorite part of this thing. It is just I'm so grateful for this format and for people like you come on and just spend this time and just are willing to chat about it.
You know the saying where they say you teach best what you teach best what you most need to learn. I feel like you podcast what you most need to learn. So like I think I personally need to hear stories of people and how they started and how they lived a moment at least without fear. Like there was a moment where they overcame fear or weren't smart enough to know they should be afraid, or we so in life put a lion in the tall grass around us all the time when there's no lion there. And I think that's why Here From There is valuable to me, because I get to hear how people dealt with their lions. Like, why did you think there was a lion? And I'm really curious about it when they come out. I was like, how did you do that? What was your thought process in that moment when you did what Allison Munn? Why did you go to that door? And she was like, I don't know. She was just a kid. She was like, I'm just going to go do it. She didn't know there could be a lion. She was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? He's going to be like, what the hell are you knocking on the door? Be like, okay, see ya. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is so great. Brian, last thing about social media, these are pretty consistent. At what point did you start embracing social media? Or did that?
I am not consistent at all. I am
really?
not. I'm
Wow.
terrible. I'm an old, listen, here's the thing. I'm an old guy. I am old school. I want to tell a story and I want it to be polished and good. And social media is not about that. Social media is about slice of life in the moment. What do you think about this thing? It's just,
Not
and
polished.
that doesn't feel like I want to put a polished performance out. It's just my way I'm built. So most of my posting right now is advertising the podcast. And occasionally I'll put, like I love Severance. So I did a little Severance thing that I thought was super clever and fun. I thought it was freaking hilarious. I thought it was going to blow up, and it
Yeah,
didn't.
it was great.
But
It was great.
But when I think of something really like, oh, that's going to be good, I'll do it. My son, who is 21 years old, literally just texted me yesterday. He's like, we got to get you back on TikTok because your whole audience is there and there's a ton of trends and they'd love to see you do them. When I first went on TikTok was during the pandemic, and I did this thing. It was this music that plays, and typically the trend was the music played, people would go like this, like this, like this, like this, and then it would cut, and they'd have their shirt off and they'd be ripped. So it's somebody who you wouldn't think of as being in shape, and then it would cut and they're like ripped. So I did that trend because I saw it. I was like, I know what to do. So the beginning of it is me with a beard doing the thing, and when it cut, I turned into Arwen. And TikTok called me within 36 hours. It was like, we need to verify you. I ended up with like 800,000 followers. It went.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It got millions, 10 million views. It's got so many views, it was ridiculous. And so I kept on with it for a little bit, but then I kind of fell off. It was like, I don't know, I don't have ideas. I feel like I have to be brilliant every time I do something.
Right.
And it fell off.
Sure.
And it was the
you have
dumbest
to
thing
keep
I ever
pumping out.
did. Like, I should have stuck with that. That's a career. And so my son is like trying to get me back into it. So I may actually hire him and be like, you go find trends and I'll think of stuff to do with them.
He can make good money doing that. He's your social media manager.
Yeah, but that's me. It's me trying to shift my career. Like, how do I think differently?
This is a great place to end it. So, hidden gems, we do it at the end of every episode. If you have a hidden gem, we would love to hear it. And Rian's going to ramp up his.
Okay, here we go. Well, first hidden gem is a podcast called Here From There with myself and my sister, Sheila. So that's the first hidden gem. The other one, and this really isn't hidden, it's been out for a while, but it's something that I try to read a chapter every day, and it is called Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss.
Oh.
So here it is.
Love Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss. So Tim Ferriss is an amazing podcaster, researcher. The guy is a brain. He's just I really think he's trying to unlock longevity. I think he's just an amazing guy. So this book
He's brilliant.
it's made for someone like me who has a short attention span. So what he did is he said, I took every interview I did with all these different people, and I turned each one into a small chapter, and I hit all the highlights of things that they said. And he asked them all similar questions. So you hear all their answers. At the beginning, he has a chapter here are the things they all have in common. All of them meditate, all of them. All these successful people have some form of meditation. They may not call it meditation, but it's meditation. They all use a similar mattress. It's like this special mattress. You'd have to get the book to figure out what it is.
Oh, wow.
I was like, how do they
Did
even
not
know
know that.
about
Yeah.
that mattress? But he's like 70% of them had the same mattress. It was crazy. But it's split into three things. It's like a finance, spiritual, and physical. And so I every day just open it. And whatever chapter it is, I read. And it takes 5-10 minutes. And I learn something brilliant that makes me sit and think. Because it's really smart, successful people talking about very, very interesting things and how they operate, which is, I think, good for us, right? We want to figure out, hey, what things can I steal? So that is my
That's
cool
awesome.
thing.
I love that. That's
Love that.
fantastic.
Love that. That actually goes well with mine. So this is just a recent concept that came across, and I felt like I wanted to implement it. It's called Parkinson's Law. It very well could have been in Tools of Titans. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it. It's the idea that work expands to fill the amount of available time that you gave it. So if you gave a project 2 weeks, you're going to take all 2 weeks. If you're going to give a project 6 months, it's going to take all 6 months. So my workaround that I realized I needed to do was make fake deadlines.
Ooh.
I need to give myself a fake deadline saying, hey, this video that you always wanted to do, instead of taking 6 months, it needs to come out in a week. You only have a week, and it needs to be done, and it needs to be a firm deadline. And I need to trick my brain because, you know, that's also what they say, where people who are more productive and busier, they get more stuff done because they have so much in their schedule they can't dilly-dally.
I love that.
That's my recent revelation.
I love that. My thing is, if I work out, I'm much more productive that day. And also another trick is I learned this on a podcast. For someone who has an ADD brain, if you start counting backwards from 5, about 70% of the time you'll start. It is crazy.
Really?
It's crazy because it does two things. It forces you to action, but it also shifts your brain to a different part of the brain that's now counting numbers. So there's something about what it does chemically to your brain. I just throw, all right, Brian, you got to pay those bills. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you start. It works. Not all the time, but it's crazy. It's a very helpful thing. Yeah.
That is revelatory.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee, but it works for me.
Yeah.
You know, if I remember to do it, it works for me most of the time. Other times I'm like, I don't want to do it.
That's a great bonus hidden gem right there. All right.
Jesus, if that works, that's a game changer. Yeah. I'm gonna count, and I'm gonna get a better mattress. Yeah. That's what I'm gonna do.
And then you will be a titan.
Mine. And then I will be a titan and using my tools. Mine is actually, now that we're talking about this, is a book that Lesly talks about in Intensive, and I finally got it and started reading it. It's called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards.
That's awesome.
And it's a lot, you know, it's about the people talk about the left brain, right brain, and how they handle different things, and left brain handles executive function, right brain creativity. But it's about moving yourself into that right brain space. And I haven't finished it yet, but it's you know, it's exercises basically that engage that side of your brain. But the more of those creative, it can be painting, it can be playing the guitar, whatever it is that gets you into that mode of thinking where your left brain is not trying to put structure. Because I think in as far as acting goes, that was a problem for me for a long time, where like I would have an idea about how it should be, and I would get trapped in that, and I would not allow that sort of freedom in. So I've started digging into this. Now it specifically relates to drawing and perspective and everything else, but I think it's just to fuel all types of creativity. So
I love that.
It's great. Gem. Dude, I'm excited for you, man.
That's great.
That book is amazing. All right.
Yeah.
Well, what a way to end it. Thank you, Brian. I mean, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you so much for coming on. And we're going to put all the links and shows in the description.
This has been, thank you, man. This has been fantastic.
Can you just,
I'm so appreciative.
Can you just, before we stop,
Cleveland.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. I love it.
I love that. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure.
See you soon, pal.